Okay, it's 12:02 on the dot, so I'm going to get started. Thank you for everyone who's joining us today for the next installment of our CRAVE series. Today we'll be focusing on the CoreNet New England Hackathon results. My name is Denise PA. I am a Vice President at STB DPM and a proud member of our CoreNet New England Board of Directors. I'm going to be doing the front end slides and just kind of run through our housekeeping items, and then I'll be handing off to our moderator today, which is Kevin Loos from Crowd Comfort, and he will do the panelist introductions and get us started. So as you know, for those of you who have been part of our CRAVE webinars to date, as this pandemic started to take shape, your executive committee made the forward-thinking decision to continue our strong educational mission and created CRAVE, CoreNet Real Advantage Virtual Education Series, supporting our membership's desire for continued learning. CRAVE series is a virtual roundtable discussing important, timely, and relevant topics in corporate real estate. This is brought to you by Real Advantage and Education Committees and is open to all CoreNet members. Topics that may be explored are remote working, morale management, policies, providing a safe work environment, supply chain logistics, changes to workplaces that are not in lockdown, construction and legal implications, ergonomics technology for a home office setup. And these are all some of the topics that we are considering in our next series. These sessions are being conducted in lieu of and similar to Real Advantage workshops and education events. Because of the criticality of the information being exchanged, the corporate partners and founding circle members who fund Real Advantage have agreed to make these sessions open to all members. Once the COVID-19 crisis has passed and business as usual begins again, we will return to stated levels of participation for corporate partners and founding circle members. Sorry, I'm just trying to, there we go. Okay. So for the, you'll see we have a bunch of upcoming CRAVE webinars this month. So there's quite a few great topics. So please go to the website and sign up if you haven't already. Take a look at those. And as always, CoreNet New England is on social media, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. So check us out and like our page and keep abreast of what's happening within the chapter. And a thank you to Stephen Smith from North Star. He's always our social media liaison. He does a great job for us. Also a big thank you to our corporate partners, our platinum sponsors, our gold and silver sponsors as well. Thank you all for your commitment to the chapter. So this session, obviously Kevin is going to be moderating for us, but we have the Q&A function. So if you have questions that you'd like to put forth to the panelists, please use the Q&A function and the chat box. And Kevin will be monitoring those, and he will moderate out those questions throughout the presentation. So Kevin, I'm going to hand off to you.
Great, thanks Denise, and thanks everybody for joining here today. It's Friday. We made it to the end of the week here. And I think, the purpose of this is to provide some compelling content, something interesting, and really drive an interactive discussion here. So the format, as Denise kind of laid out, what we'll be doing here today is going through 3 of the hackathon presentations. Each one's going to take about 5 to 8 minutes. And after that, we'll have that interactive discussion. So we do encourage all of you attending to get your questions into Q&A, just as you think about them. And then we won't be taking questions after each individual presentation, but after the 3 presentations, that's when we'll start that conversation. So I'll do a couple quick introductions here. Denise has already introduced herself. We also have Eric Graham, my co-founder at Crowd Comfort and our CEO. And Stephen Elias of Citizens Bank. So thank you all for joining and participating here today. We are going to start with Stephen, Eric, and then Denise. So with that, Stephen, I'd like to hand it off to you to kind of lead us through your presentation here. And you are on mute, just to.
Yep, I did
There
stop.
we go. Thanks, Kevin. And thanks everyone for joining. Before we jump in, so our team focused on the distributed work, this distributed work piece. And I just want to give a special thanks to all of the folks that participated in that team. We had good representation from our chapter, of course. Special thank you to Sarah Ross. She put together a lot of the slides that I will share shortly. Before I jump in, though, just wanted to give a high level sort of so what on really where we focused our time and a lot of good conversation on. You know, obviously we've all been part of this huge remote work experiment. We've all learned things. So I hope there's a lot of interaction here and Q&A, and happy to answer any questions anyone has. But we focused on 3 themes. Let me just share my screen here, and we'll jump in. So really 3 key themes here, and this is all post-vaccine. So we recognize that we're in a very dynamic environment right now. Things are changing, although not as quickly as they were when we were first all probably watching the CNN live feed of which state's closing now and how many people can get together, and just things were just happening so fast. We're all drinking from the fire hose and trying to keep up and trying to keep our companies informed of what was going on. But we really focused on, well, what happens once there is a vaccine, once we get to a stabilization, because that will really be the true test of what work looks like moving forward. So we really focused on 3 key themes, to support a more distributed workforce. We think it's here to stay. We don't think it's the only tool in the toolkit, so we don't see 100% work from home or 100% in office. And we already knew this. I think the pandemic, unfortunately, it's taking a pandemic to sort of reaffirm that message, that you really can work anywhere and working wherever works best for you. But there are some things that need to change as this becomes more widely adopted. We need more adaptive leaders, right? As leaders, we need to be able to communicate and interact with our teams in different ways and really be empathetic to our employees' situations, personal situations. So adaptive leadership, and really how you're managing the team and measuring performance. Again, many of you probably work on a team that's highly mobile and in different places, and probably have figured some of this out. But again, more widely adopted leaders are going to have to figure this out. Those more traditional leaders that maybe are used to seeing their folks every day. Culture and brand will be more important than ever. You may not be interacting with the physical environment as much, and so how do you really connect your employees, especially new hires, to your mission and your brand? And what's the culture? How do you translate culture in a virtual way? And so we'll talk a little bit about some ideas we came up with on how to do that. And then really just around the workplace and the operation strategy. So your employees' expectations are going to increase exponentially around safety. Their expectations when they come into the workplace are going to be that my company is keeping me safe. They have a good plan in place and they know how to respond and react. That's no longer a nice to have where someone complains about the HVAC. They're going to be informed consumers and want to know what type of filtration, how much fresh air, right? They're seeing a lot of the same information that we are, and we're going to have to be prepared to answer those questions and really provide that confirmation to them that we've thought through everything, we're safe, And when you come into the building, you'll be taken care of, because they will have choices again. So we have to really, really think about that. So let's just jump into the first theme quickly: adaptive leadership and team performance management. So again, fostering this concept of trust and transparency. Again, personal and work life is going to blend even more than it ever did. I think there's a new level of empathy as we all started to work from home 100%. And for those of you who have kids and family and everyone is home, the dog's barking, the kids are screaming, we all recognize that we're all in this together, and it's okay if something like that happens. There's more acceptance of that. So really being that leader that understands and empathizes and adjusts their style to each team member. Right? Everybody's different. One size fits all is not going to work. Everybody's home situation is a little bit different. So just recognizing that. Generating that balance between, continuity, employee well-being, right? So your employees are going to be dealing with a lot of different situations. Recognizing that, making sure you're communicating often, increase focus on their well-being. I know our company, Citizens, did some mindfulness sessions, some meditation sessions. That it should no longer be looked at as, oh, that's interesting, but why don't you get back to work? It's part of it. This is it takes a large mental toll on people, and to get your best out of your people, you're going to have to give them opportunities to recharge, rewind, and reset, so to speak. But then how do you measure colleagues, right? And how do you measure employees, right? Knowledge workers, right? We recognize call centers and operations functions. They have very good, well-defined metrics that they can track. But for the large portion of the population, the knowledge worker, it's going to have to be more on output, right? And you're going to have to really focus on more proactive, consistent communication, checking in, asking questions, seeing how they're doing, culling out that information from them, getting updates, because they're not going to be at your fingertips just to call into your office. Creating new training programs for leaders in how to lead in a virtual environment. And then building more of a consistent measure of productivity. So what are those clear and concise goals that people are working towards? Again, how are they progressing against that? Providing real-time feedback. All the things that we've talked about now they're just going to be elevated. So some of the recommendations, again, broad, consistent communication. You may need to tailor your communication strategy to different audiences, different employees. Continuous feedback. Again, you're not always going to be seen. So you gotta try harder to reach out and make sure that you're checking in with your team and seeing how they're doing, and asking for updates. Empowering your workforce. Again, there's going to be different personalities, different skill sets on your team. Empower them to get things done. Focus on the output rather than time put in. That's going to be especially important as part of this virtual and distributed workforce. And again, continuously looking at performance evaluation criteria. What do we really need to focus on? It's the output. So your goals, your conversations are going to have to be much more meaningful. What are we looking to accomplish today? How does that roll up to the company's overall strategic objectives? And how do you specifically play a part in that? And what am I going to do as a leader to support you? And what is your role in that? And this didn't, hold on, let me get a different version of this. See if I can pull that back up.
While Steve's doing that, I'll just jump in here and again, encourage folks on the line to ask questions. We do have 3 subject matter experts, not just here on the line with us today, but I know in the audience as well. So this is a great opportunity to, you know, ask away if you want to know what people are doing, how they're perceiving things, getting the perspective on certain things. That's what the Q&A is for. So just a reminder of that.
Apologies for that. So the next theme was on culture and brand. Again, a lot of your culture and brand is in the office, or, you know, physically going to a town hall, going into the office. You're seeing the brand come to life. Well, that's not always possible when you're at home. So how do you really enhance the connection to the company culture and brand, especially for new hires? What does that look like? You know, developing those daily connections and opportunities to socialize, that's going to be more important. You know, evolving the workforce engagement and the experience. So putting more focus on how we engage our employees, how we engage our workforce, trying different, you know, variety and styles of engaging. You know, everyone's different. They may latch on to one thing and maybe not so much on another. So some of the recommendations around culture and brand: find ways to connect authentically with your team, with your employees. You know, I think we're learning now through the pandemic that we are going to go back to work at some point, maybe not in the way we did before. So some in-person meetings after a vaccine are likely, but Zoom, WebEx, Slack, GoToMeeting, all of those virtual meetings are going to be much more important now, and going to be a key part of how you interact and engage. Do some creative things around, you know, bringing, you know, marketing to the home office. You know, nominate a brand ambassador, distribute some branded merchandise for virtual meetings so people have a common connection, you know, to the company brand. Share recorded messages or brand experiences for people to interact with. And you know, like CoreNet has done here with the scrolling screen, customized backgrounds that, you know, maybe speak to your company's mission or vision, or show the logo on the background. Focus on events, right? So there might be some, you know, CoreNet's doing a great job of social happy hours to promote teamwork, provide information. So just really vary what type of social events you provide so that your team can actually come together and interact and talk to each other. For larger companies, you may be able to hire a community manager or establish a social committee. For smaller organizations, it may be one person that takes this on. But just looking at fun activities and ways to, you know, break up the work, because most people find when you're at home, you may be working longer hours and taking less breaks. So, you know, try virtual happy hours. You know, maybe one of our folks had the idea of a curated Slack channel, remote athletic challenges, just things to keep it interesting and really bring that team bonding into play. And then the whole recruitment process, I won't go into this too far, but just reimagining the whole recruitment process, what needs to be done in person versus what can be done virtually for new hires onboarding. You know, assign someone to take them through that journey, figure out where potentially in-person needs to happen versus what can be provided ahead of time, pre-recorded messages from the CEO, or even you know, video conference or calls with key members of the organization so they can learn a little bit more about what it's like to work there and how to be successful. And lastly, workplace operations strategy. You know, workplace is still going to be there. We believe that. We talked about this concept of workplace as an amenity. It's part of the toolkit of things that you offer your employees and how to work best. But it is going to need to change. The physical workplace is going to need to change. You know, you're going to question, what am I coming into the office to do? And that's likely going to be less individual tasks, more collaborative, obviously in a safe way. but you get your colleagues, your employees are going to expect more protocols, safety standards, right? How are you keeping me safe in the office? And then just continued investment in occupancy metrics. How are we using the space? How do we need to change and adapt? I think one thing this pandemic has taught us is things are changing rapidly, even more rapidly than they were before, and you're not going to have all the answers. So how do you track, test, and learn and adapt as you go? We did talk a little about, so you think about operation strategy. When you go into the office, you typically have a good connection, typically. But what about home? There's a disparity between where you live and what type of internet connection you get, or how often your power goes out. So is your company going to provide you better access to Wi-Fi, a generator, whatever it may be? There really needs to be that ubiquitous good experience wherever you're working from. You know, and again, really developing that frictionless work experience. I can work anywhere and be successful, and I can choose where I want to work. And so lastly, just, you know, again, recommendations, validating the physical office versus home situation. How does those two play into it? Emphasizing workplace as an amenity, and you know, maybe there's different. The physical workplace will have a big impact still on culture and brand. So how do you, when people do come into the office, you might have to plan that out a little bit better and figure out what types of experiences they may have when they come in. Safety and secureness, there's going to be again, new protocols around safety in the workplace, personal responsibility. If you're sick, don't come in. That's going to take on a whole new meaning. And then just measure, test, and learn. So that's really where we landed. I won't read through this last slide, but you know, it's just more around operation strategy, having the policies and procedures in place to make sure you can come back safely.
Kevin, I think you're on mute.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate that. You know, one thing that, you know, keeps surprising me is every time I go to one of these presentations, like, you very quickly realize how much there is to think about. Like, it's amazing how many variables there are. And every time I hear from someone who's kind of thinking about these things and implementing them at their company, like, there's just new things that I didn't even think of. Like the two I think that you pointed out were the onboarding for new employees, right? How do you make them feel part of that culture? I think that's a big question. And then the other thing I haven't really thought about is, you're right, when you are working remotely, like, what is personal responsibility versus the company responsibility in ensuring connectivity and amenities at home, right? Because if you're asking people to, you know, work remotely, you need to support that as well. So I think these are all really interesting things to think about and discuss. And I'm going to hand it off to Eric here with this next presentation, which isn't going to make it any simpler, but I think it does a great job of identifying even more of these items that we all have to think about in this kind of new workplace, new world that we're living in. So with that, Eric, I'll hand it off to you.
Thanks, Kevin. Can you guys see my screen? I just clicked.
Yep.
You guys can see that, the journey back to the office. So this has been an amazing experience. I think for me personally, I was involved in two teams, one at the global level on wellness, and this team, Marissa Fava, Chris Cotter, Mark DeLeva, Jennifer Toronto, Nicole Keeler, and Dorian Fragola all helped put this process together, and this decoding of the mind map of wellness and getting back to work. And when you think about this problem, wellness is the whole thing. This is about being safe and healthy. This is sort of a very unusual challenge. And when you think about that process, we started with sort of thinking about the physical world and the various places you would encounter. But then when you think about kind of where we are, and I'm just going to go back for a second. when you think about where the risk comes from, you think about, the air, the surfaces, and the people that are around you, which is kind of an all-encompassing thing. And this starts to sort of paint the picture of the stress that people are going to encounter when they think about coming back. And there's so many things to think about. And as we sort of thought about this journey back and sort of build this mind map, it became very clear how complex this was, and complex for all of us. When you think about the air, there are different ways to sanitize the air. And number one, the way you protect yourself is by wearing a mask or some form of PPE. Now, we're not going to be wearing PPE in the workplace for the most part, unless you're in a hospital, but wearing masks is something we have to do. But are there other technologies like UV, technologies that can help us enable an advancement into the future to protect us? And I think we've all seen how technology has helped us to remain productive throughout this whole period. Just this event right now is a demonstration of that. When we think about the surfaces, obviously washing our hands, hand sanitation, personally is important. But are there other ways in which we can leverage technology to improve those situations? And again, one of the things that's being talked about and being used is UV light. There are many opportunities, and I think the use of these technologies can help provide more confidence for employees as they come back to the workplace. And one of the things that we as within Crowd Comfort and our company has been thinking about is how can we leverage our platform to deliver ways to turn, what is often invisible tasks like cleaning the workplace, which areas have been cleaned or which filters have been changed. We've been leveraging our core technology to build new capabilities to turn that invisible task that would provide confidence and deliver in a way that was easy to display and for employees to digest. Those are all things, like I just talked, we haven't left the home yet. When you think about then stepping out the front door of your home, you're thinking about, how do I feel? But how does everyone in my home feel today? And if anyone has sniffles, you're going back to square one and you're staying home. If not, then it's, have I done everything to protect my home and my family as I step out the door? And then one of the major challenges that we really struggle with, originally we weren't thinking about the commute. We were like, let's just focus on the physical workplace. But the commute was such a big thing, especially if you're taking public transit. Now, if you're driving, if you're walking or you're biking, you can kind of manage fear, without too much trouble. But when you're taking public transit, it brings up all these new questions that we all kind of are still trying to understand what will happen. What will the commute look like? How much extra time will it take? And then when you get back to the workplace, there's all these different spaces that have different characteristics that, all need to be thought about and figured out. How do you go through that process without exposing yourself to risk or to minimize the risk of exposure? And then ultimately you're heading back home. And one of the things that kept coming up was this question of personal responsibility. And, wearing masks is something we're going to need to do always until this goes away. Otherwise, it's going to create risk and stress for everyone. Hand sanitizer, keeping distance. Doing these things will reduce our risk for ourselves. But when we go back home and we're walking in the front door, the last thought is like, take off your shoes, take off your clothes, throw them in the wash, and make sure that you're safe going back into your home. And that was kind of the result of the work we did as our team. And this exercise of building this mind map was a joint effort between this New England team and the global team that I participated in, and a lot of thoughts and energy came from both those groups. And it's been an amazing exercise for me personally, and I think for all the team members that worked on it. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Eric. And I actually like the contrast between Stephen and your presentation, right? Because with Stephen's, it's really looking at it from the operational and safety and company perspective, whereas your team kind of put yourselves in the shoes of the employee, right? And what that journey back looks like. So again, I think it shows the complexity and of some of these challenges related about coming back, both in the immediate but the long term as well. And so with that, last but certainly not least here, Denise, I'd like to hand it off to you with your presentation.
Okay, great. So I will share my screen. Get things started here. And for the audience, you definitely see some threads of Eric and Stephen's presentation in mine, even though our task on our team was to study and respond to space utilization and metrics, and how we see that shifting as part of this pandemic experience that we've been going through. So like the other two, we had a great team. We had almost 20 people. It was a terrific group that was a great blend of service providers and end users. So I wanted to thank each of them. I think some of them are online today. Thank them again for their participation and for their insights. Couldn't have done this without them. So here are the key takeaways we studied as a group, and what I'll be talking about today. So number one, really looking at pre and post-COVID square foot seat metrics and what we see that shift. Number two, really looking at that away from the individual, but looking into the workplace as a whole and seeing what the use of the workplace might be changing in that employee experience that you heard so much from Stephen and Eric, and how we're going to need to respond to that. And then that overall impact to leasing strategies and your portfolio planning. And again, at the very end, rolling into how do all these things line up as far as the financials as we look at real estate costs. So this first slide speaks to kind of a look back. Where have we come pre-COVID? And as all of us know, the workplace has been getting more and more dense over the past 10 years. And we saw, plus or minus kind of landing right before COVID at that 125 square foot per seat over the last 10 years. And so certainly COVID has had an impact on that. And as we're looking at return to work, as Stephen said, we're really looking at social distancing, having to get less dense very quickly and all of that. So that the individual seat has certainly will change, and that perspective will change as far as the use of the whole space. That differential between we space and me space is going to dramatically change, we think. So this really speaks to, again, bringing in the thread of the wellness that Eric was talking about. We know that this won't be the first time that we're going to go through some kind of challenge globally from a pandemic, and so we can't have a short-term memory. So office design is really going to need to adapt and make some permanent changes in the way that we do the work in the office, and all of these things having to accommodate more sanitizing stations, PPE, storage for PPE. Certainly we see in healthcare and in life science that's even more intense a storage issue than in your average office space. And then overall, of course, work from home. We're all working remotely, as we've said. We're all doing it successfully, mostly with the distractions we have to deal with at home. But that has made, there's a loss of connection because of that. We're all virtual, we're doing Zooms, we're doing other things to stay connected, but we think face-to-face collaboration is going to be even heightened as a goal of going into the office, as a driver of people going into the office. So again, knowing that more people are going to be working from home even after they return to work, employers are really going to have to look at doing more flex seating, unassigned seating policies, we think, to help keep that density pretty low, to keep people healthy, to keep that social distancing even beyond when a vaccine is available, and also to drive flexibility, certainly. And the cleaning aspect, again, that goes back to the wellness side of it, making sure that you can keep the space really clean. And when you have unassigned seating or flex seating, there is a way to make that happen easier and to give people that confidence that their space is being cleaned on a regular basis. So again, really driving what the use of the office is going to look like, and Stephen talked a lot about the culture piece, and that again, that's something that when we're at home is a challenge, right? How do we stay plugged into our company culture? How do we feel like we're part of the organization when we're working from home so often? So the office becomes really so much more important, we felt as a team, to bring people together, to satisfy that need, to collaborate, to take a break from working from home, but really just having that ability to work together when we're in the space, more often doing the heads down work at home. But in the big picture, and I think Stephen talked about this too, that choice, we really felt strongly that choice is even more important going forward when it comes to how the office is designed, giving people that flexibility to work from home when they need to, but also to come into the office when they need to and feel like they want to come in the office, that it's safe, and that there are some great amenities in the space that are going to bring them into the office. That's not going to change. So that was a very important part of the experience for employees going forward. And this slide really kind of reflects, again, looking where we've been and where we project out. So as we talked about the ratio of collaboration seats versus task seats, it's going to be higher collaboration, less individual seats, and that there will be, obviously we're really doing that social distancing now to ensure people's safety. We think that might relax a little bit, but we don't expect that we're going to see densification like we did pre-COVID, again, because we want to keep people healthy and well. So we were looking at maybe a 175 square foot per person per seat going forward, and that would kind of be the way that the pendulum swings back in the distant future. And I think that the other presenters also talked about KPIs, about utilization, about tracking utilization, certainly understanding there's a need to do more workplace strategy. We felt that there's more use of tech to be tracking utilization, studying, making sure, doing surveys, making sure that employees are feeling like the space works for them, that they're there, that they're utilizing the space the way that we've designed it for, that would be even more and more important going forward, to keep that design in line with what the employees in the organization needs to function. And bringing all those concepts kind of into the leasing side of the house, we're currently seeing and talking to folks that are already adapting their leasing strategies and their negotiations to include language, force majeure clauses, to include pandemics, and also going back to landlords and negotiating for more cleaning, enhanced cleaning protocols, all of that into the lease structures as they can have those opportunities. And then the other piece that we talked about was that we think that owners are going to really be looking for more flexibility in their lease terms, again, because they might be taking shorter leases. They might be looking for more flexibility for sublet as they look at, the next 18 to 24 months and studying how the return to office is working. And if they may need to offload some space, they're going to want that flexibility to do that. And we thought overall, we really felt there'd probably be a flat or a shrinking of the overall square footage footprint for the reasons that we talked about in the change of more we space, less me space. And we thought that would shake out to probably a smaller square footage overall. We also talked a lot about this question of the suburban versus urban campuses. Again, I know Eric and Stephen talked a lot about public transportation and the concerns around that in the urban environments. And that they're again, with choice, we think that the owners might be looking at either splitting their campuses between urban and suburban, so that those that really have to use public transportation can use their cars and drive to a suburban location. And that those that might be in the city and comfortable using their bike or walking, they could continue to do that. So again, another element of choice that we thought would be coming up in leasing strategy discussions. And lastly, sustainability. Certainly, there's going to be a commitment from the owner side and I think from the landlord side to do design within buildings sustainably, to look at LEED and WELL certifications. That there's going to be that's going to be seen as an amenity going forward, and a desire for going to a certain building is going to be a key criteria of site selection. And also that would lead owners to invest, or looking to invest more in a complex fit up to do enhanced HVAC systems, doing hands-free elements within the space as a hardware perspective. So it's a less touch, the least amount of touch you can do in the space. And that drives kind of the TI allowances, which kind of, walks me into looking at the financial side. So the long-term strategies that we've talked about all relate to business continuity resilience, so that when we come up on another pandemic or another global situation, emergency like this, we don't all have to shut down again. So I think we all felt that there would be a desire to really focus on that business continuity planning going forward. As we talked about, we thought leasing costs would decrease because of the total office footprint coming down, and possibly shifting some of that campus to the suburban market, which obviously has a lower price point. But then again, the higher investment being in technology and work from home investments. So technology from the side of looking at how to make the remote work experience better, Zoom and staying connected, make sure that the network speeds are there, but also the technology at home. And we think that companies will start to look at, if they can afford to do that, look at enhancing people's at-home offices and investing in that. And then also that workplace strategy component, looking at surveys, looking at sensor tech, observational studies, all those things to keep a pulse on how the office is really functioning and how people are feeling about the connection to the company. And also, as we just talked about, from increased spend on workplace wellness in general, better lighting, maybe antimicrobial materials, green cleaning, all those cleaning protocols do cost more, and possibly going for certifications like LEED Well and Fit Well, to just give, again, the employees that confidence that there's an investment in that and they can feel good about that. And all of those things kind of feed into the higher costs that we're thinking will be coming up on the construction side. All of these things, cost more to do, especially the HVAC considerations. So everyone will continue to be tracking these metrics, again, from the usage side and from the financial side. So all of that will be very, very important to real estate professionals to make sure that the space is being utilized and that the employees feel good about coming to work on a daily basis. So that was the final slide.
Great. Thanks, Denise. Appreciate it. I think that kind of wrapped it up and rounded it out really nicely. So again, I'll remind folks that we do have a Q&A box, and I can see who the attendees are. And I know many of you out there, and I know there's a lot of extroverts on this call. So I know there's questions on top of minds. Maybe you're all kind of eating lunch here during this lunch hour, but the Q&A box is there. I have plenty of questions that I've kind of noted down here. So I'll kind of maybe kick it off with one of those. So Stephen, you started your presentation off and you said the big remote work experiment, right? And so after about 3 months of this, I guess my question to all three of you would be, has the experiment been successful? And I'll start with you, Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has. You know, from just answering from citizens' perspective, we've had our technology challenges. We've invested a lot in technology. And overnight, we had, I don't know, 12,000 VPN sessions that needed to take place, right? And it was successful. Work didn't stop. Certainly work changed a little bit. Like for my team, we went from, planning out new spaces to figuring out how to return to the office and do it safely. And what are the 10,000 things you need to think about? Our facilities team went from managing facilities to producing hand sanitizer and disinfectant in the basement where the fitness center is, right? So, but ultimately, yeah, I think it was successful. I'm happy. I'm interested to hear from Eric and Denise too. I think it worked.
Great.
Yeah.
Denise?
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree, Stephen. I mean, I know personally from STV side, I know our group, because we're project management based, we were kind of used to working anywhere, and we'd already been doing that remote work. But the other part of our divisions weren't used to doing that. And so we were on a dime, forced to go to all remote work, and it's worked out. We've stayed productive. People have gotten used to it over these months. And in our clients, we see the same thing as we're talking to them. Some have gone from 100%, no remote work policy to 100%, having to do that. So, but we know, again, like we were all talking about, the choice is still important, because in the surveys I know we've done and that our clients have done, there is still a desire for people to feel that connection and come back in the office. And there's a lot of people looking forward to that. So that's what we expect to see going forward too.
Excellent. And Eric, what have you seen?
I mean, I agree that it's been a successful experiment. This is a disruptive event that's changing the way we think about the workplace and work in general across the board. And seeing that we can be productive in this way, I think forces us to think more and more about how to deliver the value of the workplace. What is I think the question of the value of the workplace has been a question being asked for many years. When we started to go into these open plans and we started to kind of squeeze people into smaller footprints, we were doing it with the mindset in many ways of, we're going to do a smaller footprint, but we're still going to have people coming in 9 to 5. And I think I have a contrarian view about the density per square foot, but I'm adding the time element to this equation, because people are going to more and more be coming in to the workplace for the true benefit that it delivers, which is human interaction at some level. What someone described at Steelcase as propinquity, this sense of like community and connection. And when that's the purpose, then you're gonna reduce the time increments for which people are in the office. So you're dividing those shared spaces. So the physical proximity may be 175 per square foot, but I think if you take the people divided by the square footage divided by the people, it's going to be under 100 square foot per person.
Because it's shared.
They're sharing because of the time element. Yeah. In a way, you're fracking the time that space is available. So I think so my theory is that you're going to see more density, but because of the time element over time.
Spread it out. Yeah, that's a good point. I will just say too that although I think it was successful, I think it shed some light on some areas that need to improve with work anywhere, whether it's technology, consistent access to, again, broadband, things of that nature. there's a question that popped up here about ergonomics, and we're working on our dining room table or our couch. So there's going to be a lot of things like that we need to address, because now the home office is just as important, and now people recognize it's just as important as being in the physical workplace. So it's going to shed light on how do we solve some of those things that before was like, well, you get to work from home, so we don't really care about your back, or the fact that your Wi-Fi crapped out and you had to come in. It's going to put more focus on, we got to make sure that that experience is good, because now I can hire someone anywhere. They may be not in our footprint, but they're the best person for the job. And yeah, they'll come in occasionally. But I need to make sure they're set up well at home so I get the most out of them. So,
well, and if you think about the employees, like, this is going to have an impact on the home real estate market. The way we think about either the apartment we rent or the home we buy, we now have to factor the fact that we need an office in there, and we may need an office for 2 people, not just one. I'm seeing all kinds of different conditions the way people are managing this right now, and I think it's going to be, we're sort of pushing the responsibility that was exclusively the employers down to the employee to figure out.
I do think you have to think about those at-home amenities. I mean, you observe all the challenges that we encounter on these Zoom calls, right? Dogs barking in the background, children running through the camera. And yeah, I am sitting on one of these like 1970s prison chairs right now, which has been killing my back over the last 2 months. I didn't even really occur to me that we should have something better, and you got to think about these things in the long run. So I think that's a great point. Another question from Marissa just came in. What new real estate technologies or services have you seen emerge in the last 3 months to address some of these new challenges that we're dealing with?
I think I've been seeing, new apps, that the ones that I really thought were cool, that would really help employees to make that a more educated choice about coming back into the workplace at any time. So apps that actually show, who's in, how many people are in the space, that can track that. So you can book spaces. Obviously, that's something we've already seen, but layering in, being able to have visibility into the whole office to see how dense it is at any one time. So before you go in the office, you can decide, can I have a seat, and select that seat and feel comfortable. And also layering into cleaning protocols. So you can see, either as an employee, you could have visibility to see if a room that you were going to book for a meeting has been cleaned, or from the service provider side, as janitorial services could see, hey, this room is now, done being used. I need to go and clean it, to help track that. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
Stephen, have you seen anything emerge? And then I'll get to Eric.
Yeah, I'm sure Eric has more insight on this, but I agree with Denise. I think it's more centered on the facility manager, the company, to have a better view of their real estate. Are they keeping up with the protocols that they put in place, in terms of cleaning? When you think about mechanicals, HVAC, monitoring those things. Not that this is new technology, but I think it gets taken up a notch.
Yeah.
And from the user perspective, just again, a more frictionless experience with, I can book a desk, I can see what's going on, what's the density look like, I can plan out my day. So again, more consumerization through an app to be able to do that easily. I feel like it's a little bit disaggregated today. There's multiple apps to do multiple things, just like there's multiple collaboration platforms. Like, do we finally get that integration that we need to make it that frictionless experience for the end user to manage their day?
Yeah, good point. And then Eric, how about you?
Well, to Marissa's point about teleportation, Star Trek solved that problem a long time ago. But in reality, we are being teleported right now to this meeting. And I think what is happening with technology is that the abilities of video and streaming are actually going to get better and better, and to the point where when you're looking at a screen, the visible eye won't be able to differentiate between someone being in front of you or not. And we're just, this Zoom is way better than things we had 5 years ago, and that's all because the computing capacity is getting better and better every day, and that the next generations 5 years from now of Zoom and WebEx and those things is going to be is going to bring us into reality remotely in many ways.
No, absolutely. And I think, Stephen and Denise, you both mentioned sensors, right? And I think another forcing function here is that there's now this question between privacy and safety among employees, right? Like what takes priority? Because now I know specifically in California, there's now conflicting laws, right? One around privacy, but now one around safety that is requiring for certain things that compete with the items around privacy. And so, Bob asked the question here, how do you ensure that these are not intrusive or feel invasive from the employee experience side when you think about the sensors?
I honestly think that privacy is going to be a thing of the past in certain situations, and it's going to be for the greater good, right? Again, I don't know which way it'll go, but my personal opinion is in order to meet the new expectations of employees, people, whatever, privacy is going to have to loosen up a little bit. Some states are requiring temperature checks and screenings and things of this nature. Contact tracing, where have you been? I feel like privacy is going to be a big issue. It's going to have to open up, and again, for the greater good of the population, which is going to be really tough in the States. I think other parts of the world have already sort of stripped any people of their personal privacy, but in the U.S., it's going to be a big, big struggle. But I think we need to go there.
Yeah, just to layer onto that, I think that you're spot on, Stephen. And I from when I've talked to tech vendors, they assure you that there's a way people can opt in, that they're still not going to be tracking, the individual per se, that person, but really just tracking their movement and occupancy. So hopefully that's true. But like you said, with contact tracing, you really have to get very specific to be able to know who you've been in touch with. So that does change the whole game of privacy.
We do have a couple more questions here, but I do realize it's also 1:00 Eastern, so I don't want to, go over if we need to wrap it up.
Recognizing we're at the top of the hour, I just want to thank everyone for joining, and also especially thank our sponsors, because these events would not be possible without you. So thank you so much. Certainly happy to answer any questions. Understand people need to drop off, but we can certainly follow up offline as well.
I do need to jump. So thanks for letting me be part of the presentation.
All right. Yeah, thanks,
Denise. It's been great working with you.
Appreciate it. And again, thanks for everybody for joining here. Are there any closing remarks on the CoreNet side? I don't think so. All right.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Kevin, for moderating.
Well, you got it.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Good to see everybody.
Thanks, Stephen.
Have a nice weekend.
See you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.